Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 10 previews Rip and Beth's ending if John didn't die. Yellowstone Season 5 gave a lovely preview of Beth and Rip's future if John Dutton i.e. didn't die, leaving them with far too much responsibility for what Episode 10 teases. Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser's characters have been lovebirds at the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch since they were young, and they finally tied the knot after years of chasing each other in the Yellowstone Season 4 finale. Still, Beth and Rip can have anything but a traditional happy ending. The pair has too much responsibility now that John Dutton i.e. has met his fate, leaving the ranch's future uncertain. In Episode 10, Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2 flashes back to Rip's time in Texas. The Yellowstone foreman headed down to the Lone Star State in the Part 1 finale, and it didn't take long for his wife to catch up with him. Beth comes to visit Rip at the 4-6's ranch, but rather than pitch a tent to see her husband, she sweetly kidnaps him and gets them a hotel room in Amarillo. During her time in Texas, Beth was pleasantly surprised by the state. At the hotel speakeasy, Yellowstone previews what Rip and Beth's life looks like outside Montana. In Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 10, Beth remarks that it's the couple's first time out of Montana together as they embrace in bed. Rip tells his spouse that it's the first time he's ever been out of the state. Beth asks whether Rip has ever been to the beach, and he says no. The moment causes Beth to reflect on the couple's life outside Montana, telling her husband to imagine what they could make of their shared experience if not shackled to the ranch. Rip reminds Beth that he chose that fate. There's a moment when Beth is driving in to surprise Rip, and she gets pulled over by a law enforcement officer. They see she's been speeding, but when Beth coolly explains she's on her way to meet her husband at the 4-6's ranch, the officer lets her go with a warning, mainly for Beth's safety, and a thank you for what her husband does. Beth couldn't believe the Texas officer's gratitude for her family's business. Plus, Beth notices no tourists at the hotel. Thus, Yellowstone Season 5 shows how perfect the couple is in Texas cowboy country. Despite the apocalypse of change, teasing how perfect the cowboy and his wife are in the great state, the couple's fate lies in Montana's Paradise Valley, at least for now. John Dutton needed his daughter around to help him protect the ranch. Now that he's dead, Beth isn't off the hook. The ranch needs Beth more than ever, as she and her brother Case are the only ones left to fight for John's legacy. The ranch has already trapped Beth, which is alluded to in Season 2, when Riley's character calls it the Alamo. Beth knows she's stuck there. Beth has to protect the ranch from her adopted brother, Jamie Wes Bentley, who has officially been working against his adopted family since he impeached John in the Yellowstone Season 5, Part 1 finale. Jamie is working with Sarah Atwood, Don Olivieri, to take down the Dutton patriarch so that he can become governor and reinstate the lease for Market Equities Airport. Thus, Beth and Rip are another generation of the Dutton family tree in Yellowstone that must fight to protect their ranch from others who would take it, like Jacob and Kara in 1924. If Yellowstone plans to continue with Season 6, it's nearly impossible to imagine Yellowstone continuing without Hauser and Riley's characters. However, if Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2 is setting up a sequel, it's easy to imagine Rip and Beth at its center, carrying on the Yellowstone Dutton legacy somewhere other than Big Sky Country. There's a slight chance that once all the dust settles from Beth and Jamie's Yellowstone War, Case and Monica set up to run the ranch without Beth and Rip. Still, it's unclear if Luke Grimes and Kelsey Aspel could continue the story without Riley and Hauser. If the lovebirds leave Montana, they know just where to go. Beth makes it clear in Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 10, that she's a fan of the great state of Texas. Beyond the absence of tourists, Beth aspires to the business model of the 4-6's. If everything settles down at the ranch and Case can manage on his own, Beth and Rip could head south to open up a new branch of the Dutton Ranch in the Lone Star State. Still, it's hard to imagine them anywhere other than the Dutton Ranch. Regardless, they need to save it first. The sprawling landscape of Montana's Yellowstone Ranch, ever synonymous with power struggles, family bonds, and the relentless pursuit of legacy, seems to hold a different rhythm in this imagined timeline, one where John Dutton doesn't die. In a show defined by tragedy and tension, this altered course offers a glimpse into what life might have looked like for Rip Wheeler and Beth Dutton if the patriarch of the Dutton family had lived. This is a what-if scenario that would change the entire dynamic of the family and the future of the ranch, culminating in a future filled with unresolved desires, enduring devotion, and the complicated web of family politics. As Season 5, Episode 10 opens, the tranquil beauty of the ranch contrasts with the uneasy atmosphere brewing within the family. Beth stands at the window of her office, overlooking the sprawling land she's fought so hard to protect. But her mind is not on the land or its future. No, her mind is on Rip. Rip, the only man who ever saw her for who she truly is, without the armor of her sharp tongue or hardened heart. With John still alive, though, the weight of the family legacy is heavier than ever. Her father, stubborn as ever, is still clinging to his idea of how things should be, and it's clear that Rip's future on the ranch is less secure. Rip has always been fiercely loyal, not just to John, but to the ranch. The idea that he would become more than a ranch hand, a man capable of inheriting the land alongside Beth, has always been on the horizon. However, in this alternate reality, John is still at the helm, steadfast in his desire to keep the ranch in the family's control, and he doesn't trust Rip to inherit it. The tension is palpable, as John's protective nature toward his children clashes with his growing awareness that Beth, while fierce and brilliant, cannot be trusted to lead alone. He fears that Rip's rough edges, while softened by his devotion to Beth, aren't enough to secure the legacy of the Dutton family. Rip, for his part, is tired of fighting for validation. He's earned his place on the ranch, has lived through unimaginable pain, and has built a life with Beth. Yet the sense of exclusion is undeniable. Beth has always been the one to challenge him, both the walls he's built around his heart and the boundaries of the Dutton Empire. But even she knows that if John doesn't step aside, if the Dutton legacy remains tied to a man like him, Rip might never be more than a shadow of the future he dreamed of. Despite their mutual love, the tension between Rip and Beth grows. She's caught between a life with Rip, the man who understands her like no one else, and her loyalty to the ranch, her father's vision, and her family. But in this world, John's still there, still running the show, and Beth, despite all her power and influence, isn't free to carve out her own destiny. Meanwhile, Rip struggles with his place in this shifting landscape. He's fought to protect Beth, to ensure her happiness, but he knows that the weight of this world is becoming too much for her to bear alone. John's grip on the ranch, and his firm belief in his own version of family legacy, is a storm that's constantly in the background, clouding every moment between Rip and Beth. In their quiet moments together, away from the tension of the ranch, Rip and Beth try to hold on to the love they share. But their conversations are laced with unspoken fears. "I can't keep doing this forever, Beth," Rip tells her one evening, his voice gruff but earnest. "I've been loyal to this place, to your family, but I can't keep living in your father's shadow. Not like this." Beth, ever the protector, wants to reassure him, but she knows the truth of his words. "I'll fight for you, Rip," she promises, but even as the words leave her lips, she realizes that fighting her father might tear them apart. Her loyalty to her family is fierce, but her loyalty to Rip runs deeper. The Duttons' fractured legacy becomes a living, breathing entity in this episode. John Dutton, whose very presence has been a defining force in the family's history, becomes an obstacle in the future. Beth and Rip, standing on opposite sides of the tension, find themselves looking down separate paths, each uncertain of where the road will lead. As the episode progresses, the stakes grow higher. A looming threat to the ranch forces John into a position where he must consider the future of the land. His decision to keep the ranch within the family, even if it means keeping Rip on the sidelines, strains the bonds between father and daughter. Beth feels the pull of the life she could have had, one where she could have run the ranch alongside Rip, free from the shackles of her father's expectations. She wants the freedom to lead, to stand beside the man she loves, but she can't escape the fear that John's approval, or lack thereof, will always be a barrier to that dream.